I was talking fantasy football with my friends the other day.
Did you see that?
Alan. Bravo.
Echo.
November.
Tango. On. Welcome back, everybody, to Bent on Fantasy Football Season 2, Episode 2. I have got my good friend Joshua Worley be joining us here in just a moment. But I want to give you a little heads up on what we're talking about this week. We're going to be talking about average draft position, and we're going to be talking about I've got a couple drafts coming up this weekend. Everybody else has got drafts coming up within the next couple weeks. Mine are coming up this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday at noon, Sunday at 4:30. So on the Sunday league, I actually have my draft position already. I have the number 1 overall pick, and I want you guys to help me out here, okay? I want you guys to tell me who your overall number 1 pick would be if you have the pick or did have the pick. But before we jump into all that, I'm going to bring in Josh. Come on in, Josh. It's a pleasure to have you again here.
Hey, Alan, thanks for having me.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Welcome, everybody, back to the dungeon.
Yeah. Love having everybody in here. So this week, we've got a couple new drinks that we want to introduce to you guys. Last week, you've seen the beers that we had. This week, we've got something different. We've got Your Name Here. So, for a small donation, you could get sponsored right here. We could put your name right on this can. We'll work out the details. I'm going to give you the email address. It's bentffb@gmail.com, and you can send information there if you're interested in advertising on here, get your name on here to sponsor the show. Real cheap, I promise you.
And delicious, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you drinking, Josh?
I'm drinking Like and Subscribe beer.
Oh, like and subscribe, yeah. You know what? You guys could actually help us with that. You could hit the like button. You could hit the subscribe button. And heck, they could hit the love button.
They could.
Yeah.
And no matter whether you like us or not, hit that subscribe button.
Now, see, the thing is, most people say there is no love button. But if you're answering that way, it's not a question why you're single. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. Not going to talk about that. Anyway, so, Josh, this week, like I said, I've got a couple drafts coming up. I've got one Saturday and Sunday. My Sunday one is the one that I really, really am looking forward to. I've been with these guys for a very long time. And I've got the number 1 pick overall.
Yeah, and most people would dream of getting that number 1 pick.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of interested in trading it away, though. I'm not a big fan of the number 1 or the number 10 pick. It's a 10-team league. So I'm not a big fan of either one of those 2 picks. And the only reason is because I'm extremely impatient when it comes to drafts. Drafts are my favorite part of the year. I love drafting, but I get extremely impatient when it takes 20 picks to get back to me again. So I'm looking to trade that draft pick away. If anybody on my league is interested, let me know. What's your thought on the first pick?
The first pick, I think, in my opinion, and I know our opinions differ greatly on this, depending on the format of your league, it's a PPR, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Christian McCaffrey, to me, is still the clear-cut number 1.
Yeah, I like McCaffrey too. But last year, different league, had the number 1 pick overall. Guess who my number 1 pick was?
It was probably McCaffrey.
It was McCaffrey, and it was a very, very rough year. So I tend to shy away from the guys that do me wrong. I know, it's not their fault they get hurt, blah, blah, blah. But I tend to shy away from that. So if I have to pick number 1, it may be McCaffrey, but then again, maybe you guys have a better idea. Let me know.
And I know we talked about this on last year's first show, actually. Yeah. Point differential is a huge advantage that fantasy football players have.
Yeah.
And Christian McCaffrey, by far, was the number 1 point differential.
Yeah.
From the number 1 to the number 2 running back in fantasy.
Yeah, and I was looking at the world leader in sports, if you know what I'm talking about, and they actually have him ranked as number 1 too. Now, I don't always go by other people's rankings. I just kind of take it in and make my own theory. But I'm seeing his name at the top of a lot of lists this year. Again, just like last year. So definitely something I want to look at. Again, I want to get your guys' thoughts. But what do you think about Dalvin Cook?
You know what? I really like Dalvin Cook. That offense is a run-heavy offense. The only question I have about Dalvin Cook is his durability. I've I've never been big on a guy that has 20 plus rushes a game year in, year out. I mean, his durability was questioned over the last couple years. He's a dynamic playmaker. He's still young. Okay, so he's got many years left in the tank.
Yeah.
All it takes is one injury.
Yeah, right. And I always say that, every great player is only one injury away from being a not so great player. But there's Adrian Peterson, good example of somebody who came back tough as nails, still chugging along in the NFL. You know what we didn't
less
do?
than 7 months. Less than 7 months from his surgery, by the way.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. You know what we didn't do?
We didn't open our beers, did we?
We did not.
Well,
guys, you know what? Here's our drinks for this week. As usual, we want you to pop open a cold one, sit back, and enjoy the show. All right. Formalities. We got to get those things out of the way. So, anyway, jumping back into what we're looking at is we're looking at the overall draft picks. We're not going by position. It's going to be a little bit too extensive if we go that route. So what we're doing is we're looking at the overall player, because I believe in every draft you should pick the best player at your draft pick, the best player on the board still at your draft pick. So kind of.
And I know that's something we agree on year in, year out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's interesting too, because for so many years, running backs, last 10 years at least, running backs have been the number one thing in the first round that everybody goes for. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case this year. There's a plethora of running backs out there. If you go down the line, we do have some that are kind of questionable in my mind. But if you go down the line, there's a lot of running back talent out there this year.
Oh, absolutely. And especially with this year's rookie class. Mm-hmm. I mentioned last week on my bent prediction that I think Michael Carter is going to finish the year as a top 12 fantasy running back.
Yep.
And we'll get into his ADP here shortly.
And
some trends that we've been noticing. So
yeah, absolutely. So Mccaffrey, obviously, I mean, we don't need to talk about his ADP because it's 1, maybe 2. 1.2 or something. So, let's kind of look at some of the other guys. Alvin Kamara expected to have a big season. Dalvin Cook, like we talked about. Ezekiel Elliott actually didn't have a terrible season last year. He wasn't the greatest. He was my number 1 pick in another league, or my first pick in another league. I had the 3rd overall pick and wound up with him. And that didn't work out as well as I hoped it would. But
one thing I will say about Zeke, and I'm kind of high on Zeke this year. While Dak was playing, although limited number of games,
sure,
he was the number 3 overall running back in fantasy during those games where Dak played, and that's in a half point and a full point PPR both.
Yeah. No, he was definitely up there as far as the points go. While Dak was in. Dak's another one that kind of scares me this year too. He was one of my higher picks last year. I had him and Elliott, which is a nice combination if they're both firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely. And they were for that limited time that they were together.
Right. And I was seeing dollar signs, win signs at the that point in the season, and my hopes and dreams kind of failed at that point. So Dallas, much improved team, a lot of weapons on the team, a lot of young talent on the team. There's a lot of draft picks that are going to be coming in the first few rounds from Dallas.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I have Zeke as my number 2 overall prospect, right behind McCaffrey, ahead of Dalvin Cook.
Mm-hmm.
That Dallas offensive line is elite, to say the least.
Yep.
And he's going to get the receptions. He averaged about 7 targets per game while Dak was in that offense.
Mm-hmm.
5 of those targets, you break one for 15 yards, you break one for 10 yards.
Yeah.
We're talking 70 to 80 catches a year in a PPR, half point PPR. That's huge.
Yeah, well, anytime you've got a running back that's coming out of the backfield and catching passes for you on top of everything else and still a solid running back, it's always a bonus. But like some of these guys, like trying to think of good Kamara, perfect example. He's coming out of the backfield, catching the ball a lot. Huge asset. But again, you've got to kind of temper your expectations of him as well. It's a changing offense. They've got they're kind of post Drew Brees now, so they've got some things to figure out. Not everybody's as talented as Drew Brees is, as you guys know, but I think an overall asset, definitely Kamara, definitely a top 5 pick. See him go this season.
I love Kamara. We've seen what his pure level of talent can do in the past years. I'm a little sketchy on Kamara. I would still have him in the top 5, but at number 5, behind guys like Henry and Cook.
Henry's another one too. He's poised to have a fantastic season again this year. They've got a lot of things good happening on offense this year.
They do. That team, I think, according to a lot of those people out in the desert, I think the Tennessee Titans are the second or third highest win total projections. So that team's got a lot to be happy about.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I question about Derrick Henry is, again, his durability.
Mm-hmm.
His workload, 20, 25 rushes a game. There's just, throughout the history of the NFL, and especially NFL fantasy, it's hard to see a player. I don't think it's ever happened. A running back has had 320 plus rushes in back-to-back seasons. And you're relying on Henry as much. Granted, they won't this year because they picked up Julio Jones. Okay, that's going to take a lot of those stacked boxes out of the way. But they're still planning on relying heavily on Derrick Henry, and I just have a question about that durability.
What about a few years back? I'm trying to think of the running back for Denver. I had it just a second ago. I can't remember his name. He was a running back. He had a ton of carries.
Terrell Davis.
Thank you. Yes, he had a ton of carries back to back, but he burned out really fast.
He did.
I don't know if he had that the same quantity you were talking about before, as far as total.
He was close to 300 in back to back. He wasn't quite as high as 320-ish range that Henry was.
I know he got the ball a lot. In his hands a lot. Whether it's through the air or on the ground, he got his hands on the ball quite a bit, and he burned out real fast. Another guy that I think is going to be a huge workhorse, I think, throughout the season, and he's more of or he's actually a wide receiver as opposed to a running back, is Tariq Cohen, I blew that.
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Age does that to you guys.
It does. Yeah. Sorry. Totally was thinking about something else. Sorry about that. So anyway, I think Hill is going to be another overused player this year. And what I mean by overused is a guy that's going to get double teamed now and still beat double teams, and he's going to get picked on until eventually they're going to figure out a way of stopping him. But in the meantime, he's going to run like the wind. Hill, he's got a fantastic arm coming, throwing the ball to him, coming downfield. There's nobody faster. I mean, I think he's probably going to end up late first round, probably 9, 10, maybe 8 if somebody really wants to get out there and take a chance. But another one that I was considering this coming weekend too.
Yeah, and to strengthen your point, Mahomes does have an accurate arm. It's historically accurate, especially this far into his career. However, a big plus for Hill is the threat of Mahomes on the ground.
Yeah.
That's going to free a lot of, they're not going to double team with safeties, with corners as much, because you got that threat of Patrick Mahomes running. He can bust out a 20-yard play, a 20-yard run. They're going to have to have that safety as a spy in most scenarios. Not to mention Travis Kelce. So you're going to have a lot of single coverage on Tyreek Hill, and as the 4th fastest human in the history of the NFL, he's going to burn them.
Yeah. There's
more often than not.
Nobody's going to catch him. Once he gets going, he's amazing. But anyway, just kind of, I'm jumping around a little bit here on the positions, just because I've got a lot of names that have been floating through my head. So throw some names out there that you think would be a good in the first round, 5 or 1 pick.
Well, and I know we talked about this a little bit, but the format of your league is pretty much going to dictate who that number 1 pick is going to be.
Yep. So we're on a single full point PPR league. 4 points for the passing touchdown and 6 points for running and catching and receiving.
Rushing and receiving.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
McCaffrey's still going to be my number one in that pick. However, we've kind of floated the idea out there of some of these other leagues, like a tight end premium league, where it's a 1.5 or 2 point PPR for tight ends. Now, in that scenario, I wouldn't think twice about drafting Travis Kelce, number one overall.
In that scenario, yeah.
In that scenario.
Yeah.
We talked about Superflex.
Right.
Or a 2 quarterback league, basically the same thing.
Right.
I could see taking Mahomes, or I'm going to say it again this year, Lamar Jackson. He's still my number one quarterback.
He was next on my list to ask you about.
So contrary to popular belief, but yeah, I could definitely see taking one of them. But in a PPR or half-point PPR, with the point differential, there's just no going wrong with Christian McCaffrey. And I couldn't fault you for taking Devontae Adams based on what he did last year, the amount of targets he's going to get as well. But Christian McCaffrey is a hard yes for me.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And I'm sure I'll hear a lot of that, a lot of hard yeses for McCaffrey. But I need some fresh ideas because I want to change things up a little bit this year. I want to do things differently. So, what about in the quarterback position? I mean, obviously we've got Mahomes at the top of the list, just like everybody else does. But beyond that, what do you see? The landscape's changed a little bit in the NFL.
It has. It's gone a lot more toward the Randall Cunningham type running quarterbacks. Now, I know you and I kind of argue about this. We go back and forth, but I'm not a big proponent of drafting a quarterback too early. Okay, and I know you have in the past. You've taken in leagues that we were in together.
Yep.
He's taken a quarterback near the end or near the middle of the first round.
Now, also, I drafted. Yeah, you're gonna laugh at this because I did. I drafted Drew Brees for my first pick, first pick, and I won the season. With that. So, yeah, I did have a little help at running back and some decent wide receivers,
and
too.
Injuries kind of helped him, too, with all the other teams, but...
Maybe. Maybe, but not much. But anyway, yes, no, you're absolutely right, though. You know, in looking at the big picture, you really have to determine what your league, what the primary point getter is on your league. So, in the leagues that I've been in the past, the quarterback was actually the big point scorer as far as any of the players goes. It was 6 points for a touchdown, a passing touchdown, 6 points for a running touchdown, 2 points, so on and so on. But you know, as things have evolved, leagues change. You know, everybody changes their rules after a few years and things. And we went to a 4 point 4 point for rushing touchdowns or rushing or passing touchdowns by a quarterback. So that changes the emphasis in my draft. Now, you know, instead of the quarterback being the number one point getter, I have to look at running backs, primarily running backs, because we get points, like I said, PPR league. So we get points going both ways on those. Wide receivers become a little bit more important. Tight ends actually become a little bit more important too. But nothing goes, in my book, before a kicker, for sure.
Okay, Taco.
Okay, I had to throw a kicker joke in there. It's just...
Back to what you were saying, though, about the 4 point. That's interesting. The 4 point rushing or passing touchdown for a quarterback that really kind of tightens the pack.
It does.
You know, it's really going to boost somebody like a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers, even a Ryan Tannehill. Get them closer to that Patrick Mahomes, get them closer to that Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray,
right.
Where that running quarterback, there's not as much of a premium.
Yep. And it's interesting, too, because when our league did that, made that points change, there were some people that didn't even notice that. Or I shouldn't say that. They did notice it, but they just didn't do anything about it. So they continue with their same draft strategy, the same thing they've done year in and year out, and we're in for a huge surprise once the season got started. I was almost in that boat. I'm trying not to let that happen to me, but it can happen really easy. So again, pay attention, real close attention to the points in your league and how your points are scored. It makes a huge difference with your draft.
Oh, absolutely. And I know this phrase has been beaten to death, and you and I can agree on it. We've talked about it extensively over the years. You're not necessarily going to win your draft in the first 2 or 3 rounds, but you can lose your draft in the mid to late rounds.
Absolutely.
And on that point, we want to get into a couple guys here. We talked about taking the best player available. which we subscribe to, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we have a difference of opinion on who some of those guys are.
I'm right, he's wrong.
Most of the time. But we're going to talk about a few guys that are in this, that are overvalued at the ADP and are undervalued at their ADP.
Mm-hmm. What do you want to start with?
My first is going to be Michael Carter. I know I'm beating him to death. Yes, I picked him as top 12 running back last week.
Mm-hmm.
But he's going right now in the 7th round of NFL fantasy drafts. Okay, he's right around running back 29. You know, you look at that backfield. You got Tevin Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
And who else? LaMichael Pirine.
Yeah.
And who?
Pirine. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Pirine.
Yeah, whatever.
I could see Michael Carter taking 60% of that snap share in that offense. There's a reason they drafted him in the 4th round this year.
Yeah, you know, but you got to wonder though, because that is a crowded backfield, even though it's not the elite of the elite. But it's a crowded backfield.
That's a big stretch.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of the elite of the elite.
That's why I said no, it's not the elite of the elite. Yeah. So, but everybody's going to get their hands on the ball at some point in the season. 60% is good. I like 90. I like 85, 80, 90, right in there. 95, 100, absolutely love for a year anyway. But so I don't know if. I didn't want to say anything last week when you made your prediction, but I think that's a little bit lofty for him. Number 12, top 12 overall.
Top 12.
Yeah.
Now, based on that Jets offense and that defense is going to suck again. Mm-hmm. Yes, we know that. They are very lofty predictions.
They are. No, and that's why they're...
It's a bent prediction.
That's why they're bent predictions. Absolutely. So, okay. All right. Excellent.
And I do have one other guy as a running back I really want to talk about because this could be the greatest value and this could be a league winner. Melvin Gordon. Okay. We know Javonte Williams, Michael Carter's teammate out of the University of North Carolina, that 1-2 punch. There's a reason they drafted him in the 2nd round, the Denver Broncos.
Right.
He's projected to get a large portion of that, of the running back work. Okay. Remember, Melvin Gordon still ran for 1,000 yards last year.
Yeah, no, I had Melvin Gordon on one of my leagues, and every week I was like, oh, he's going to surprise everybody. And he did once in a while, so I was happy with him.
At the point where he's being drafted, though, as a running back 30 to 32 right now, I wouldn't be surprised, and I could make a prediction. It's not going to be my bent prediction for this week, but Melvin Gordon, I believe, will end up on another team this year.
You think?
Absolutely. He could still be a number 1. Probably half the teams in the NFL right now. So Melvin Gordon is a sneaky pick, going right around that 30 to 32. Like I said, he could be a league winner if everything works out.
If he goes to another team, they'll write him off for the season. He's done. Because you're coming into, and I say this about every time a player transitions from one team to another after the start of training camp. And the reason I say this is because they have to go in, they have to learn a whole new playbook, they have to gel with a new team, they have to figure out what little quirks they have, what little quirks their quarterback has, or the rest of their offensive line, whoever it may be. It's a huge transition. It's a one-season process. I always say, forget them that season, look at them next season, see where they're at.
We got to bring up Trent Richardson like that. I'm gonna argue with you right there.
Why?
And look at what's happened in the preseason. We've had Cam Akers go down. If I could foresee Melvin Gordon going to a team like the LA Rams, where it's a system offense. Now, your running backs are much more likely to thrive in a system offense like that.
So go ahead and mention Kareem Hunt. Go ahead.
Kareem Hunt, he's another undervalued guy. Chubb goes down, and
I'm just saying he came to Cleveland, and he was everybody's like, oh, Chubb's gonna be sitting and blah 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 and so on and so on. Didn't happen.
Kareem Hunt was still a top 25 running back last year.
He was, but was he a every down back? No.
He wasn't, but look where he was drafted.
Was he a goal line back?
He was not.
Okay. All right. That's all I got to say about that.
Yes.
All right. So, you're basically saying that he's undervalued.
He's extremely undervalued in my opinion.
Okay.
In the running back 30 to 32 range. You can get him right now. I've done about a dozen fantasy drafts over the weekend. Few more.
Mm-hmm.
But right now he's going in the 8 to 10 round range.
Yeah,
and as a potential RB3 or RB2, like I said, at that value, that late, that could be a potential league winner.
I would say a definite RB2 for sure. And going that late in the draft that's a steal. That's a steal.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Now, another guy that I think is going to be, and I hate to use the word undervalued, but I guess for lack of a better term, that's what I'm going to call it. It's Antonio Gibson in Washington. I think that this kid has got a lot of talent, and I don't know if Washington can figure it out. I think he can be a huge asset for the team. I don't know if Washington can figure out how to use him though. What that says, and I know who the head coach of Washington is, but what that says is I don't have a lot of faith in the coaching staff.
Well, remember this, though. That defense is, many project, these so-called experts, project Washington's going to be the top defense this year. They're going to be running the ball like there's no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget, too, at the University of Memphis, Gibson was a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a running back until he came into the NFL, so he's going to be catching a lot of those little checkdowns from who?
Yeah.
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Right.
Ryan Fitzpatrick loves to check that ball down to his running backs.
Now, I'm going to say this because I say this every single season. What do I think of Ryan Fitzpatrick?
You love him. He's one of your top 5 quarterbacks.
Okay. I think he's an extremely intelligent individual. That's all I'll say about him.
That's all. He said worse.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot worse. So.
Yeah. So, and I hate to say that, but he's not my first choice at quarterback, and I think that puts a damper on the entire team. I shouldn't say that, on the entire offense. That's what I think is holding back Gibson, to be honest with you. And I think the coaching staff is not going to be able to figure out a good way to use Fitzpatrick for what he's good for, and for Gibson for what he's good for, and make the two mesh. That being said, I'm going back to Gibson's got a lot of talent, and he's an excellent running back. And as you mentioned, he used to be a wide receiver, so you're going to have your points out of the backfield. So I really think he's undervalued. The leader in sports says that he's ranked 15th. Yeah, 15th. So,
and that's running back 11.
Yeah.
I would put him. He's in my top 10 for my personal rankings.
Mine too.
Even though those don't mean much, but
yep. I think it's going to end up. They're going to have to depend on him quite a bit this year.
Absolutely.
I don't think they have the other pieces of the puzzle in place yet.
Well, besides Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, there's not much there.
Yeah. So let's talk real quick about Aaron Rodgers. I want to bring this up only because there's been all this stuff going on in the offseason. And, as recently as you probably already know, the Packers have already told Aaron Rodgers that, if things don't work out this year and the way he wants them to, if he's not happy after the end of the year, they'll trade him. Definitely not to the Bears, I'm sure. But they will trade him. So
not now that they drafted their future franchise quarterback in Justin Fields,
right? Who
we both love, by the way.
Yep, absolutely. I love him more in about 6 weeks than I do right now, or 4 to 6 weeks than I do right now. 4 to 6 in the season, that is. But anyway, so what do you think of Rodgers this year? What do you think is going to come out of Green Bay?
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers is being undervalued. He's right around the QB 7 to 10 range.
Yeah.
He was a league MVP last year. 3rd overall in scoring among quarterbacks, only behind Kyler and Josh Allen. He's got the talent. He's got the playmakers around him. And I think Robert Tunyon's going to have a huge breakout year. Mm-hmm. Not a Travis Kelce year, but maybe 5 to 6 tight end range right there.
Okay.
With the tools that he has, Aaron Rodgers is set up for success.
He is. And, I don't know what all of his issues are or were or whatever the case may be with Green Bay, but he can't, at the end of the day, he can't say that he doesn't have talent around him. He can't say that there isn't the opportunity for him to succeed. If he doesn't succeed, they have to figure that out somehow, or, he can jump ship if he wants to, whatever the case may be. but they've got to figure out what how to use Aaron Rodgers and the talent around him. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Yes, and I'll agree with you there. However, I do think at his value, he's being drafted in the 5th to 6th round right now.
That's pretty low.
Sometimes even as low as the 8th round. I'd much rather have him in the 8th round as Mahomes in the over Mahomes in the 2nd or 3rd, especially when there's a lot of that running back and wide receiver depth out there. You can build your roster.
Yeah, and the thing about Aaron Rodgers, and I say this every year, so I sound like a broken record. I'm not an anti-Packer fan, but I will say that Aaron Rodgers makes the players around him better. You could pretty much give him anything to work with, and he can make it work. Now, how hard he has to work with one group as opposed to another group, that's a different story. But he's got talent. I mean, there's no two ways about it. He's a very talented quarterback. He's in a good position.
Absolutely.
In a good situation in Green Bay. If he can put it all together and make the most of it, then he'll definitely be a top 10 quarterback this year without question.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about 2 more players here, and we talked about these a little briefly. I'm going to talk about the quarterback, and then you're going to talk about the wide receiver out of New Orleans. Yes, we know who that is. Baker Mayfield, I think, is a real sneaky pick this year. He's not in the top 15 in anybody's ADP rankings. I think Chubb's going to have a huge year. Okay? That Cleveland defense is elite, to say the least. Yeah. They're number 2 on my top defenses, right behind Washington. Look what happened with Josh Allen. Last year, he had an MVP caliber season, even though Aaron Rodgers won. Ended up being the number 1 scoring quarterback. What happened? Remember what happened last week? He got a contract, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised to see 7. Baker's waiting on a contract, by the way. So I wouldn't be surprised to see 7 to 9 weeks into the season, Baker say, "Hey, where's my money? I deserve just as much, if not more. I was a former number 1 overall pick."
Yeah, and that's one of the things you really gotta, and that defines a player really. I mean, if you're going for money at that point, it's the logical thing to do, the smart business thing to do, but not necessarily best for the team, which kind of bugs me a little bit.
It does.
But anyway.
From a fantasy perspective, though, I wouldn't be surprised to see Baker play himself into a huge contract like that.
He very well could. I expected him to even have a better year than what he did last year. Didn't quite work out that way, but I would definitely say that he'll have an outstanding season this year.
Yeah, as a ADP of 16 to 18 quarterback, I think the potential for that, he's set up for success in that offense.
Yeah, and with that defense being as tough as they are, he's going to have a lot of time to work too. He's not going to be rushed. He's not going to be running 2-minute drills all the time. He's going to have some time to actually hit his receivers, find his receivers, and hit them, or hand it off to Chubb.
Or Hunt, like you mentioned.
Get himself a chubby. Did I say that out loud?
He said it out loud.
Okay, all right. I try not to say things out loud, just think them.
Now, that being said, Baker is not one of my top quarterback picks. But where he's being drafted as a value, around 200, pick 200?
Yeah, that's overall pick. Yeah, I've got him as QB 13, I believe, on my 12 or 13 on my list.
Okay, he's right up there. I think he's just in the top 10. I think he's number 10, 11 possibly. I don't have it in front of me. So
I like him, but I think you're right. He's gonna have a solid season, but I don't know that it's gonna be something I'm gonna run right after either.
Right. So. But in the later rounds, I think it's a real sneaky pick because, like I said, he'll play himself into a contract for sure.
And you might even be able to get him as a backup quarterback too if you play your cards right. You'd have to go out on a limb a little bit, maybe take a couple risky picks before that or after that, but you could get him in later rounds.
In fact, he's not even being drafted in right around 10% of leagues.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. Huh. Wonder why.
Yeah, and then the one guy that we want to talk about was our number 1 receiver from last year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Mr. Michael Thomas out of New Orleans. Man, I tell you, even though there's no Brees there, he's still Michael Thomas. He's still a consummate receiver. He's a tough individual. He will find a way to get the ball. a lot of players, and I'm not going to mention any players' names, let themselves fade out over the years, and they get a different quarterback, or they go to a new team, whatever the case may be, and they just don't. They're never the same player. That would never be the case with Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is a consummate talent. The guy is just when it comes to getting open, he'll find a way to get open. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is.
Yeah, he may fight his teammates, but he puts up fantasy points. He's productive.
And now, in all fairness, I'm gonna stick up for him right now because the guy that he punched in the locker room is the same guy that started the stuff with the Bears. I forget his name.
No, here we go again.
Wims, or was it Wims, or whoever? It doesn't matter. He still started it with him, so it's a running his mouth thing. That has nothing to do with Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is a god. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but
he's a fantasy god. We may be without him for 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And of course, the quarterback position is what's really causing his ADP to fall right now. Mm-hmm. He's about 30 wide receiver, 31 to 34.
Yeah, and the thing about that is he's a good second half stash. He's a good stash for the second half of the season.
Absolutely.
I tried that before and didn't have a whole lot of luck with a different player, but I'm telling you, if you can find that diamond to be, then store that person away. I don't know if your leagues are going to be doing an extra position on your roster for COVID again this year, like a lot of leagues did last year. If you have the opportunity, stash him away. Put him on your roster someplace, even if he sits the bench for 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it is. The second half of the season is going to be something else. He's going to be ready to go. He's going to be in shape. He's going to be in game shape. He'll be ready to go. So
yeah, and as a 9th, 10th round pick.
Yeah.
If you remember last year, anyone who listened to the Bent on Fantasy Football podcast, mm-hmm.
We
talked about point differential. And Michael Thomas, do you remember how many points he had per game over the next closest receiver?
It was like 13 or something.
No, it was just under 7, but still.
I thought it was something.
No, it was a little. No, it was a little. It works out to about 112 points higher than the next closest receiver.
Okay.
But you're talking a 7-point differential.
That's huge.
That is huge.
Mm-hmm.
If you can have him for 10 games, he's going to put up a more productive season, in our opinion,
mm-hmm.
than a lot of 16, 17 game receivers.
Yep, absolutely. Well, you know what, Josh? It's about time to wrap up. But I do want to go with our bent predictions for this week, and we'll kind of touch base on next week. I'm not going to give you any details on next week. I'm just going to tell you that we're going to be back next week. The reason is we're putting something together that might be kind of cool, might not be kind of cool. We don't want to say anything until we know whether it's cool or not. 'Cause if it's not cool, we're not going to do it. So, but anyway, we're going to work on that. So, Josh, you want to go ahead with your bent prediction?
I went last week, so I'm going to defer to you, Alan.
Oh, really? You're going to make me go first?
I'm going to make you go first.
All right. Okay. So, my bent prediction this week is I'm going to go with standings again. I'm kind of tossed. I want to go with either standings or a quarterback. I'm going to go with standings, though. I'm going to say that New Orleans ends up second in the division this year. A lot of people are predicting them to still win the division, even though Brees is gone. A lot of people are predicting
even against Brady and the Bucs.
Yes, of course. You know how I feel about Brady.
I know, okay. I do.
That's another bent prediction for another show, but I'm going to say that New Orleans is going to end up at second this year. That's going to be my prediction. Josh, what do you have?
Well, back to your prediction. I think they're actually
going to finish. No, I don't want to talk about my prediction.
I think they're going to finish third. I like Carolina offense this year. That Joe Brady offense really did. They set records at LSU. You saw what Joe Burrow did.
Yeah.
But no, my bent prediction this year is Brandon Naiyuk out of San Francisco is going to be a top 15 receiver this year.
I can get on board with that.
I'm kind of a homer. Okay, he went to my alma mater, Arizona State, and I've seen him make plays like you wouldn't even believe, especially against University of Arizona, which was the cherry on the top.
So you're saying college plays? That's awesome. Go ahead.
Yes. But I think Brandon Naiyuk, the skill set that he has, the length, the ability to separate, there's not a true number one besides Kittle. I think he could be a 1A behind Kittle as far as targets go in that offense. And I think Brandon Naiyuk is poised for a huge season. And yes, I say that mostly because he's a Sun Devil like me, but
So,
I have faith in that argument.
is that what bent your prediction?
It did bend my prediction just a little bit.
Okay, all right.
Just a little bit.
And,
So
and I'll say this: I like Naiyuk as a receiver. Last year, I followed him with caution. I kind of watched it to see how he was, how the season was going. He's actually trending upward as the season went on, and maybe not just stats, but in his playmaking ability, in his ability to actually see the field, see what's in front of him, and know what's happening. When he goes out for on a route, he knows exactly where he's going to end up. He knows if he's going to be here and the defender's going to be here, he knows what to do next. He's truly a student of the game, and I think he's a good pick, to be honest with you.
not to mention he has arms made out of rubber. So when it comes to catching those deep passes,
that too, and you'll probably be able to get him in later rounds too. So he's going to be a steal in later rounds. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else this week. I'm kind of tapped out right now, so I'm going to tap out. Josh?
I'm going to tap out along with your poor predictions.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and welcome everybody back to the dungeon. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your week. And don't forget to get bent on fantasy football. See you, everybody.